get back to you. You know, Mr. Ketkar, when I joined the Express, I was very nervous because the first thing I heard when I joined the internet industry was if you want to get traffic on your website, you have to focus on the ABCD: astrology, Bollywood, cricket, and devotion. And I was so nervous. I said, Indian Express is a political paper. It's a serious paper. We do not do that kind of. It was very scary. And now I think a P has been added in the last 5 to 6 months, which is politics. So are you surprised by the amount of political chatter that the internet and social media is bringing with it? Any other thoughts on just the concept of how different it is this election versus last election?
Well, actually, I can say that I have been covering election from 1971, even before the advent of the TV or color TV in India, much before. And I, as a student, also participated in 1967 elections. So I can tell you that Indian people are extremely politically oriented. Their desire to talk politics, to discuss politics, to continuously converse, and all the time they are involved in politics. And that politics doesn't always mean the kind of politics one hears from the academics. It is day-to-day politics, it is community politics, it is the leaders and their images and their kind of perceptions. So I think politics is very much in blood of majority of the Indian people, and I don't think it is only because of the social media is so aflame with politics that politics has become so popular. Politics is Indian character.
Sure. James, Rahul Gandhi's interview last week. Now, would it be as much of a PR disaster for the Congress if social media wasn't there?
No, I don't think it would be. Particularly in this country where so much political discussion happens on social media, where there, with the notable exception of things like the Indian Express, you don't have a equivalent of the New York Times or the BBC or some of the kind of the anchor institutions that you have in some Western countries. And that means that social media has become proportionately more important. And so if you make a real idiot of yourself, it's much more likely that even if people weren't watching, they in effect will have been watching, because you'll see it echoing out on Twitter and on Facebook or whatever platform people happen to be on. However, that isn't unique to India. I mean, one of the great strengths of the internet, and also you could argue one of its great weaknesses as a political force, is that it's made pratfalls and mistakes, attacks, much more visible. And that has had an effect throughout all political societies, some of which is good because it's a force for transparency, but some of which is arguably pretty bad because it actually makes it much more difficult to have a serious political discussion, because political figures are always going to be fearful. You can be damn sure that Rahul's going to be pretty careful about giving another interview because this one went so badly and he was so roundly mocked. And so it has an effect on politicians and the things that they're willing to say, because they feel that they're constantly under scrutiny.
But, in the UK, where it's a much more developed sort of time that social media and the legacy media have lived in a certain sense of harmony, I could say, at least compared to most of the developing world. How is it different? How does an election campaign in the UK, take the advantages or, use the internet and social media to a campaigner's benefit?
Well, this is a very depressing conversation. I work for what used to have been called a newspaper. So do you, and so do you. One of the main losers of this revolution have been newspapers. In my country, it used to be said that the Sun, the main British tabloid, the one that has the naked ladies on the third page and generally has a pretty low standard of journalism, that used to be the paper that decided who won. That era has clearly passed, and also the era of old mass media is passing fairly quickly. The big institutions, the 9 o'clock news, the big tabloid newspapers are much less powerful than they used to be. India feels a little different to me because although all of you, use Facebook and Twitter and the internet and have 3G mobile phones, most of the people in this country don't yet. Most people don't have smartphones. There are only 150 million people online. But that world is coming. That world is coming. For you, it's already here, and for everyone else, it's very, very close to being here. And so, yeah, the sort of the big losers are the huge institutions of the old media, and what is in its place is a much more confusing world, in some ways very positive, that allows citizens to talk to each other, to talk to those who govern them, to hold them accountable, but in some ways a much more disparate world, a world that's much harder to govern. And so it's not unquestionably either good or bad, I don't think.
No, I did not want you to talk about the fall of legacy media at all. I wanted you to talk about what you see political campaigning. How is that different in a more wired world of the UK? I mean, you wrote a very nice story that you shared with me about the web election strategy of the Tories.
I think all political campaigns are trying to figure this out, and some of them do it well and some of them do it badly. I mean, you go back to since probably the Howard Dean campaign in 2004, which for a lot of the people in this audience were probably seems like massively ancient history, in which you were in your early teens. Every campaign has been trying to do something a little bit different. In 2012, with the Obama campaign, the thing that really changed was the use of data. And I think when we have these conversations about the difference, the sort of interaction between new media and politics, a lot of people talk about Facebook and Twitter. That's where you see Rahul getting panned. That's where we tend to go to engage politically. And those platforms are hugely powerful and hugely important, along with YouTube. But for the political parties, what they're interested in that, but they're particularly interested in databases, in mining sources of data to try and tailor their messages. If you looked in the 2012 election, also to a lesser extent in the last British election, you could see that in the emails that you get from the campaigns, which have got much chattier. The subject lines are carefully tested using huge sort of different databases to see which one you'll open, which one you'll reply to, which one you'll give money to. And so that's just a little example of across the board the things the parties are doing. And you see it here. Somebody forwarded me an email the other day that Mr. Modi is using here to using databases to try and organize, I don't know if it's actually happened yet, but a nationwide series of effectively tea parties in which people are going to go and have events next to chaiwala stalls in order to kind of get people thinking about the fact that Mr. Modi used to be a tea seller and is a man of the people. But behind that, they're organizing it, they're using Google Docs and email databases, exactly the same sorts of tools that Obama was using or David Cameron used in Britain. So all of the political parties are trying to figure out ways of using this stuff. I don't think anyone's mastered it.
So I can't help but say my mom is one of those people. She's campaigning for Modi, and this is exactly what she's doing. She's Bombay's Tea Party, I think. Sorry, I couldn't help but say that. Mr. Ketkar, there's a lot of headline stories that the IAMAI puts out that says that 150 seats this election will be decided by social media. My personal view is these numbers are extremely overstated, and if you get into understanding how they've come up with these figures and these data, you'll see that the string of information behind that is quite thin. Being a journalist, 42 years reporting on ground, do you see the impact of social media?
Yeah, social media does have an impact, but it is having impact more on the regular media or old media, as James said. And in fact, the regular traditional media like press and TV now collects its stories and themes and inputs from social media. And so there's a nexus between the social media and the traditional media, and which in turn influences, and we think it is the social media which has actually influenced. Social media has only influenced the media persons in the press and TV. And now giving reference to the Rahul interview, actually Rahul interview would not have been as widely, hotly discussed if it was not on the social media. But again in that, if you notice, the surviving Arnab Goswami's AK-47 fire for 80 minutes is itself was a considered achievement, because Narendra Modi could not stand Karan Thapar for more than 5 minutes. He walked out. He just removed his mic and walked out.
And by that time, Karan Thapar had only just started his first question.
So let us see if Narendra Modi can survive Arnab Goswami's AK-47 attack, and whether AK-47 attack on Narendra Modi is also made by Arnab Goswami. That depends on the perceptions and prejudices of the anchor persons. The point is that Rahul did not lose temper was a surprise for me. At one point, I lost my temper listening to the interview, and I was surprised he has not And having faced Arnab Goswami several times, more than 100 times, I know that it is easy to lose temper. I think the biggest achievement Rahul's interview was that he did not lose temper. Whether he made points or not, that is for social media and media to discuss. But I think there is a disconnect between the social media and the actual people, because social media depends a lot on individualist tendencies. Whereas majority of the Indian people, not only rural areas, that distinction is not fair. Majority of the Indian people are connected, completely connected socially, community-wise, caste-wise, neighborhood-wise, student, workers, peasants, they are connected. And that connectivity is not through Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp. It is direct human connectivity. And that human connectivity, that dialogue, that argumentative Indian finally influences the election and the perceptions. Only one small point. In South, for instance, there are 127 seats. Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. 127 Lok Sabha seats. And the lowest score was for Narendra Modi. And those are the places where the cyber world is very, very active. I mean, you call Hyderabad Cyberabad, Bangalore is a software city, Chennai is a software city. And therefore, if the software cities are not responding to Modi, and they are responding to Rahul, I think that tells us a lot. That is highly educated lot, 127 seats. And I think, therefore, there is a complete disequilibrium between North and South, and similarly the eastern states like Bengal and Northeast, they did not respond to Modi either. So I think we should not go into by the noise